Hello and welcome to the Real Exes of Portland podcast, coming to you from Portland, Oregon. I'm Heather.
I'm Sofie.
And I'm Amy.
And we are real women, real friends with real stories.
That are super juicy.
And I might add, real boobs. And we would love for you to follow us on Instagram at The Real Exes Portland. And we will be hanging out with you guys every Wednesday afternoon.
And you know what Wednesday is?
Wine Wednesday.
Cheers.
Every time she laughs, the poor thing, she coughs. Okay.
Oh my God.
Oh, Lord.
I'm so sorry for coughing, everybody.
No,
Well,
it's
she's
true.
feeling a lot better. We're so glad.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, we
Back
had to cancel 2 weeks ago because I was sick.
Yeah, so maybe it was 1 week ago. Shoot, I don't know. Time, I have no idea anymore what day it is, what time it is. Whatever.
It's almost the end of April, so that's kind of fucking crazy.
Oh, boy. So we then,
Yeah.
hello, what's next, guys?
Well, I think some of the interesting thing about what happened yesterday at our meet and greet is that I think we should talk more about who we are, where we come from, something we
Yes.
haven't done yet.
Backstory.
Backstory.
More about who we are and what makes us who we are. Oh, dear Lord. And where we come from and our family life and schooling and siblings. And
Because sometimes it makes sense, like when you're the
Yeah.
oldest or...
oh, that's...
like I think there's, you play roles in your family and, sometimes you're the favorite of the parents, of the
Oh,
grandparents.
are you talking about yourself?
Cousins? Yes. You heard them today.
She's
They're-
very well loved, people.
you heard them on FaceTime today.
She
Yes,
did.
sweetheart. Oh, my Lord. I love you so much.
I loved them all. They were so
so
nice
cute.
and friendly. And
Yeah,
cute
my
and
cousins
everything.
were there, and so I got to, shout out to Amanda, Melissa, and they listen. And so
Thank you.
they're like, oh God, of course I know who that is. I was there.
I think this whole subject thing should start off with you.
Me?
Yes,
Aw.
Okay.
She's
Okay.
She's
problem.
actually the most awake at this table.
Yeah, she should go first.
Yeah.
I'm getting there. I'm feeling better.
See, I left the party early last night.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. I
We
did other
we
things.
did the after party.
We
Yeah.
did do that.
Yeah.
Party.
And okay, so me. So as you all know by now, I'm Canadian. I was Canadian born, but I was actually first generation Canadian born.
Oh, wow.
Both my parents immigrated from Italy as children. And so my grandparents, both grandfathers, actually, back in those days, the father or usually the husband would find a job in Canada but get sponsored by another family. So usually it was this they would call them compadres or whatever. Sometimes they're related. Sometimes they're just within the town. So they're all little small towns. Within that town, there would be, a compadre. Like, so usually they're the godparents of your children or your children's children or something like that.
Sure.
And you grow up as family. And so my mom's dad, he worked on the Canadian railroad system that was being built across Canada. I have this great picture of my grandfather. He immigrated and he, worked on the railroad system in like Edmonton across the prairies in Canada. And a lot of my uncles and great uncles, that's what they did. They like literally put every spoke,
Like
those big train
huge,
that still stand to this day.
Oh, wow.
Isn't that crazy? Wow. And and the interesting part about my mom's parents is that my grandfather was in the army and he was an Alpino, which is he would actually do the the military. It was the king's military that actually watched over the Alps in northern Italy.
Oh, wow.
So they would ski down the mountain. They were hike up mountains. It was crazy what they did. And this is back when Mussolini was in power. And so Mussolini used to go visit the king, and my grandfather was tall, slender. He was very handsome, and and he had his little goatee. And supposedly, my grandfather was on guard when Mussolini would come visit, to have an on guard, so he would go to the castle or whatever where the king is. And he stopped at my grandfather and tugged on his beard, and said to him, "What a handsome man!"
What?
To my grandfather.
That's
Yeah.
so cool.
Yeah, and like just history.
Yeah,
like
just
he,
to- yeah.
he didn't talk much about the war. There was a lot of things that, there's obviously a lot of trauma. He was in the army since he was 16. And this is my mom's dad. So someone in his troop said, "Oh, you should meet, a young girl that is from my town in Calabria." So my grandfather started writing to her, sent a picture of him, and, he's very handsome. And my grandmother wrote back, and they wrote back and forth for 2 years.
I never had met.
Never met.
Wow.
This is like the original online dating, people, but by mail.
By
Like
mail.
pen pal-
Snail
we
mail.
used to have pen pals.
Yeah, it was a
like
pen
that.
pal.
Back in the day.
Yeah, and so he wrote a letter to her father and in Calabria and says, "I want to come visit. Do I have permission?" So he got permission from the father. He went down in December of 1947, 48, I think. And he met my grandmother, and they got married 2 weeks later.
Oh my gosh.
While he was there, they got married, and my grandmother, I think maybe 14 or 15 years younger than him, and he lived in northern Italy it's in a small town, Riquato, and it's in the like Venetian area, so part of Veneto, and he brought her up to this little town, and all her siblings ended up following her to that town.
Okay.
But and my grandmother was the oldest of all the siblings, and they had right away my mom. My mom was born there, and then my grandmother got pregnant again, and then she had my Aunt Dorothy, and soon after Dorothy was born, my grandfather went to Canada to work on the railroad. And usually what happened was they would go for a year and then bring their family over. They would be able to. So my grandmother took her 2 young daughters who were 3 and 1
Oh, wow.
and took them on the ship, and they crossed the Atlantic.
This is cool to hear a story like this from someone in the flesh and blood that we know, and usually you just like read about it.
Yeah.
This is cool.
Yeah.
History. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, it's super cool. And so I grew up, my grandparents, all 4 sets of my grandparents, 100% spoke Italian, very little English.
Wow.
So I grew up listening to Italian. My grandmother try to teach us Italian. But my parents were really, my mom came when she was 3 or 4, but she didn't learn how to speak English until she went to school. My dad was about 11 when he moved to Canada, and he did not know a stitch of English. Could you imagine being my son's age and coming to a new country, not knowing a stitch?
That would be scary.
Yeah.
Yeah, and my poor grandmother. And she hadn't seen her husband. It's a long story, but she hadn't seen her husband in a long time. So she, my dad hadn't even seen his dad. It was just crazy story. And my dad once told me a story. So they got off the ship in Nova Scotia, I believe. And then they took the train from Nova Scotia to Montreal, and there was relatives there, like my aunts, my grandmother's siblings. A lot of them immigrated there, stayed there, because that was usually the first stop from the ship. Because it's usually Ellis Island or Nova Scotia. Those are the two big ports that a lot of the immigrants came in those years in 19. So my dad arrived in Canada. I believe it was July 1st, 1960.
Oh, wow.
And I know so by the time they got to Hamilton, which was another train from Montreal, And Hamilton, Ontario is close to Toronto, like it's near one of the bigger cities around Toronto area. And no one was picking them up because there was a whole mix-up with who was going to pick them up. They were supposed to pick them up in Toronto, and then my grandmother didn't see anyone, so she just saw the name Hamilton. So she took my dad, and they went on the next train. And so they ended up in Toronto. My grandmother had a piece of paper that had the address in it. They got out of the train station, and my dad was starving, he said. So they went to a little grocery store that's still there in Hamilton, right near the train station. And it was an Italian owned. But my dad said all the cans back then, there was no real label. If there was a label around the can, it just had the name of what was inside it. It wasn't a picture of green beans or anything. My dad said they went in, and the only two things that they recognized was bananas and bread. Oh, wow. So my grandmother bought bananas and bread and then asked the store clerk to call a taxi and just basically gave the address on a piece of paper and handed it to the man and went to the taxi. And then they went, and my grandfather was there, his brother, relatives were all there. And my dad and my grandmother walk in because nobody expected them to come because someone went to go pick them up in Toronto. Yeah. And my dad looked at my mom, which one's my father? Oh, he didn't even know because those days they didn't have not there was pictures not hanging around. And him and his brother, my grandfather and his brother looked a lot alike. Sure. Same, they look like brothers. So it was hard to tell. But my dad's like, I don't even know who my dad is. Who's my dad? And then they got pregnant after my grandmother. So my dad and his sister are 11 years apart, and his sister, who is my Aunt Joanne, her and I are 9 years apart. So her and I are closer in age than my dad and her. So I grew up. So I don't call my Aunt Joanne Aunt Joanne. I call her Joanne. I call all my aunts by their first names.
Right. Yeah.
Because my parents were 20 and 21 when I was born, and their siblings were all young. Like my other aunt Sonia is, I don't know, she was 12 years older than me. Oh. Okay. So they were children. Yeah. And I was a baby. And I would hang out with them all the time. I was with my aunts all the time. Yeah, and my grandparents.
Cool. That's so cool.
Yeah. So, I was really close to my grandparents, and it was all about family. And it was, my grandparents' houses were always open. Like every Sunday we would have lunch at my dad's parents' house. We would have macaroni, and we would have like some meatballs, and I don't know. I would drink wine. I drank wine since I was 5 years old. My grandfather used to make his wine, and then they would put ginger ale in it. It would turn a little pink, and I would drink that. Yeah. And I had ginger ale with wine ever since I was.
That's a real thing. I've heard that in Italy and France and in Europe, that's the kids do. It's just normal to have a glass of wine at the dinner table.
Because it's little. Yeah. It's not American size. It's like little, and it goes with it's tradition, like going with your food and going with the atmosphere. Right. It's not about getting drunk necessarily.
Right.
Yeah, I learned about that later in life.
Not too much later, no.
But later in life I did. But I, as far as like kids growing up, like they were like, oh, I'm going to get drunk in high school. I'm going to get drunk. Blah, blah, blah. And it wasn't a big deal to me because I grew up with it.
Yeah, right.
I probably got a little buzz. Like I would fall asleep in the car.
Right.
Because we would go from one grandparent's house and then we go, okay, we're going to go visit the other grandparents. So we would drive down to my other grandparents' house and see my mom's parents, and all my aunts would be there because they were all still single and not married. And and I loved it. We just had,
it was my big fat Italian family.
Yeah, exactly.
Like my big fat Greek wedding, but it was,
And like a younger family. Like growing up together, like all of you.
I think my grandmother was in her 40s when I was born. Yeah. I could imagine. Wow. I would be a grandmother of a 15-year-old right now. Isn't that crazy?
That sounds impossible. I can't imagine it.
Well, not 50. I'm like 12 years old, but but there were young grandparents, and my sister and I mean, at one grandmother's house, she had like the basements. They all loved their basements in Canada. So
I wanted a house with a basement. I did, and then have like ping pong down there.
Oh no, they had a kitchen.
Oh,
A lot of them
down in
cooked.
the
They
basement.
cooked in the basement.
Oh.
And then some people would keep their nice kitchen upstairs. They wouldn't use it.
It's just for display.
It's for display. They had like usually. So the funniest thing, we had a Zia Maria, and that's what she did. She had this beautiful kitchen. Nobody ate there. We all ate in the basement. And I know my cousin. He's probably listening, but yeah, we used to sit in the kitchen.
Awesome.
She would cook in the kitchen in the basement. And then sometimes it was a very like special people coming. Then they would sit at the kitchen table upstairs. We're like, what are we doing upstairs? Like, why are we up here? And there's cookies on the table. And is Zia going to make us do it? Like, and then she would have her espresso. She would make espresso, and we'd only sit there for like espresso. And then literally the furniture at my grandparents' houses. Plastic on it.
We knew you were going to say that. Oh my god!
And they had, and it was a thing, and they would have, it would be like goldish velvet, green.
I know exactly. I can picture that.
And it's all fancy with the wood. Yeah. And then you would sit there with your shorts on.
I know. It would stick.
Yeah. Butt cheeks are coming off, leaving some of your skin and DNA all over the place.
But you could smear your food all over it or spill your wine. It'd be fine.
But we weren't allowed to still drink there because you would get it on the carpet. You can't put plastic on the carpet.
I was just going to say there wasn't plastic on the carpet. You had to preserve everything.
But they were they were proud people. I mean, everything that was. I mean, when you think about it, when they immigrated, my grandmother, my dad's mother, when he came, she just brought her sewing machine.
Yeah.
Her singers.
They worked hard for everything that they had.
And they worked when they got here.
Yeah.
You know, my grandmother, my dad's mother worked. She was a seamstress. That was her trade. And she worked at an underwear factory. She made underwear. Like, when you go to Kmart and you buy your little underwear, she would, those Kmart, like, or she worked, like, anyways. So we always used to get underwear in our stockings and our birthdays. And every single.
I have the little name tags sewn into it.
I still have some iron-on.
Those little iron-on labels?
I do. I did find them. For some reason, they're always in my bathroom. I always keep it with my bathroom stuff. And it's an iron. And my name is Sofia Pietrantonio. So it's like the tag is this long.
Because your last name's
with 12 letters.
It's hanging out the top of your underwear because the tag's so long.
So, so I grew up in this, people would come to the house, like, people would not be invited. Nobody calls each other and say, I'm going to come over. It was a revolving. So, and we would be sitting down, about to eat. Someone knocks on the door. They would pull up. Doesn't matter. Table's full. They would move people around.
The more the merrier.
The more the merrier.
Everyone welcome.
I mean, and some of the sentimental things that I have from my grandmothers is like their platters, like what they used to serve with. Yeah. Like I have pictures of us eating dinners, and I have that platter.
Which is an heirloom, and it's a great memory, and then something to incorporate in your life.
Yeah, like I have my other grandmother. I have her sewing machine table. Their sewing machine was so freaking heavy. It wasn't her, but she had it for a long time. Like she didn't bring it over. This is not the grandmother that brought it over. This was my other grandmother. I think I finished it. It's upstairs. I refinished it but I like it. Like it's just
a cool piece of furniture.
It's just and it sits there and I look at it and I know exactly where it came from. I know exactly who sat there. I have one of the chairs. Like I even see pictures of the dining room area, and I mean they weren't obvious. They were not rich but they would make sure that they had everything they needed. It was the table, food. Love,
it's the basics.
It's and it was really. They had a huge impact on my life and how I, how I enjoy the things that I enjoy. I enjoy having come. I'm so happy that we have our podcast here because I love hosting and I love the feeling I get when I'm around people and like they would. my grandfather, they would all have they wouldn't have wine glasses. There wasn't wine glasses on. There was little totsies, like little cups and glass cups. And that's where they would just fill up the wine. Wine would go in there. Yeah. My grandfather would cut up fruit. There's fruit that goes in the wine. Like he would put everything into the wine. Bread. He was like, it didn't even
meal in one or whatever.
And he used to marinate cherries. Oh my God. He used to take
that was really popular.
Oh my God, they're so good. I did it during COVID. Sharon and I did it. And we had whole bunch of because the cherries are so good here. Those they're huge and thick. So I bought a popper, like a seed popper. Oh, yeah. I was marinating brandy. I was like, Sharon, we're gonna marinate and it was so good. My grandfather would be in the fridge and we're like, no, what are you eating? He goes, you want one? And we would smell it and it would be with grappa or something. And we were like, you burn holes in your nose. And he's like, they're good. You want one? He had candy in his pockets all the time. It was so many wonderful, wonderful memories about that part in my life. And, and I'm still close to my aunts but my sister and I were the oldest in the family. So by the time my aunts got married and so forth, a lot of my cousins are 17 to 25 years younger than me. So I was always the oldest. And, and I got a great text from so I talked to my two cousins today on FaceTime, Amanda and Melissa. And then I have another cousin, Samantha, and she is young, way young. She's the youngest of all of us. And not of the girls. My brother is younger, but is young too. But and she's like, I've been listening to your podcast, and I just didn't know this side of you, and I, just love you, and because I told the story about with Mr. Pink and how my aunt had passed away in her 40s, and she was really close to her, and it really affected her, and she's like, I'm so glad you talked about Zia Ada and I just love you and I can't wait to see you and I'm just so happy I get to learn so much more about you. Aww. I was just like, shout out to Sam. Love you, Sam. And I know she'll be happy to hear that. And I feel very fortunate. I just I feel very rich in that part of my life that I got that opportunity. And I want Kyle to, have that too. So, obviously living so far away, it's a little bit harder, but I think this summer I'm going to try to keep him in Canada for a little bit.
You're being exported or whatever.
Export my son. Well, he definitely wants to go to Canada to go to school because he knows that he'll be able to drink at 19. But other than that, he should be able to get a good education.
Is it actually more affordable?
It
to go to college up
is.
there? Okay, then there's another reason.
Well, if he's a Canadian citizen too, he gets his residency. So I think he just has to live there for a couple of months. But if he goes there and gets his residency as a Canadian and he's already got a Canadian passport, he should be able to get the benefits of being a local. If you're an international student, which Americans, when they go to Canadian schools, they do have to pay more, but it is more reasonable than here.
Right. I might have to talk to my daughter. No.
We're going to deport you. You're going to go stay at Sophie's parents' house. You could go to McMaster University. If you're not going to live with my parents, they'll at least invite you over for good meals. And I know she's
well fed. Yeah. Oh my gosh, college is just so expensive here in the United States. It's insane.
Yeah.
Holy cow. Anyway, that's a side note. Side piece.
Yeah. So my parents met at a young age. They were teenagers. They met at a CYO dance, which is a Catholic youth organization. Oh yeah. So usually the churches would have, a group of churches would have these little youth, events and stuff like that. So they would have CYO dances. And so I remember going to my first CYO dance when I was in 8th grade and got my first kiss.
8th grade, people.
I started young.
I think nowadays it's 6th grade.
I know.
I'm hearing.
Yes. But anyways, back in my day, that was, It was pretty special.
You went to your dance.
I went to my dance, but my parents met at a CYO dance for a New Year's party, and my dad was hammered and smoked, and he thought my mom's name was Lisa, and
he was calling her the wrong name.
He was calling her the wrong name, and he said he woke up the next morning, there was like one cigarette, and like in Canada the boxes of cigarettes were like in a box, and you would slide it open, so you open the flap, and so he had my mom's name and number in there, and he had one cigarette left, and I mean,
that's where they used to write the names, was in the inside flap of the
it's just like a box.
Because we used to do matchbooks. Do you guys remember that? When restaurants used to have little books of matches.
No, you would have like if you get a big king size of. I used to be a smoker, so I know these. Yeah, that's a whole other story.
Did we know this?
Oh, she's made a couple comments about this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, maybe not on the
just
podcast.
Just fluent. Yeah, not on the podcast.
Oh, sorry.
It's everybody knows now. It's not a secret anymore. But yeah, I quit. But my dad quit. But anyways, he met my mom at 18 maybe, and my mom was 17, and then they got married at 20 and 21. And I was very young.
It's interesting how back in the day, though, when people used to get married after not knowing somebody for very long and get married at a young age, I feel like all those marriages seem like they last longer than nowadays when you meet someone a little bit older and then you wait, like, oh, wait, we should be together for at least 2 years, and then it's 3 years, and then the next thing you know, it's 5 years, and then you finally get married, and then it doesn't work out. It's like, what the heck? It's weird.
It is a little different.
I think everybody has different stories, and I think there's different. I don't know.
I mean, do you feel like?
I think there was just different times. Like divorce is much more easier to get right now, and I think it's much more acceptable.
Oh, that's part of the problem. Maybe they weren't happy, but they just didn't get divorced back in the day.
I think a whole bunch of.
I just say they in general.
Just in general, yeah. I think people learn how to figure their shit out. Other people put their hands up and say no more, and other people are in unhealthy relationships, which we've talked about before, and you have to call it. But I think it's important. I mean, it's you. I think I've learned from my parents' marriage. They're still married, and your parents are still married. I know, like
mine are not.
You're not, but your mom's been married to the same man
for
a long
30
time.
years or something now.
Yeah, so that's a long time.
Right.
So you see the ups and downs. I don't think there's anything to hide about marriages being hard, and kids seeing that the hard part of it. It's it's a matter of what you want your kids to emulate in their relationships, their future relationships, right?
And what you're comfortable with. Like some people have a serious calling, and it works for them. Two of my sisters have been married for a very long time, and they met their significant others in elementary school and high school. And they are dearly, dearly love their spouses and vice versa.
Wow.
And then there's some of us who met a little bit later that didn't have the same outcome. But as if I were them and in their position, I would think the same thing like they're in. So I feel like but people need to follow their own heart and their own instincts and not necessarily listen to everybody, all the outside sources.
You also don't know what happens behind closed doors.
That's a good point. Yeah.
True. However, I will say that for someone who had that same situation, there are red flags we all see in our friends. If a relationship is dysfunctional at home, usually that shows on the outside. Like you're doing something, or all of a sudden you were a big family person and now you're not. Like all these things. So you don't know what goes on behind closed doors. But my family, which we'll talk about on my podcast or whatever, is that we are all integrated into each other's lives, and we all have an open door policy. It's very rare that a door is ever locked in any one of our homes. So I at least know for my family.
Yeah, my mom grew up in a house of 4 sisters.
Yeah,
it was crazy.
Yes.
and lots of yelling.
That's your culture, right? Yeah, that's both your guys', and it's not necessarily yelling in a mean way. It's just everyone.
Yeah,
that's just the culture. Lots of yelling.
Yeah, just
not yelling at. Really.
Yeah, it just. And they just forgive each other, and they just move on, and they just, you know, they're like, so-and-so was a bitch today.
Oh, and then whatever, it just rolls off your shoulder.
Yeah,
you don't like take it personally. It's just
but my grandparents were referees a lot.
Yeah.
Well, my grandmother was.
Yeah. I love that both of you come from big families. I always wanted to be in a big family. I remember
you saying you wanted 4 kids or something.
Or I wanted... First, I was saying 6, and then I'm like, well, let's cut it back. I'll say 4. But, do you guys remember the old show called 8 is Enough?
Yes.
Oh, yes.
I loved that show growing up, and I'm like, I want to be in that kind of family. And the Brady Bunch, I want to be in that kind of family. I want a big family. I just had one brother. Okay, we're getting off on a tangent here. This is supposed to be Sophie's story.
It's okay.
Anyway, back to Sophie.
Anyway, so that's and then I moved to the U.S., which I talked about, and started my life here. I do feel guilty and bad that my son doesn't get the same, but when we go back, it's it is just different, because when we go back and we spend 2 weeks or a week in Toronto area, we visit all the family, and we spend more time, because when I lived there, we would see each other once every 2 weeks or and then you're always there for all the, the different family events, which I do miss out on, which is a bummer, because I'm missing out on my cousin's daughter's first communion, and, and my niece and nephew. My nephew is going to be graduating from high school. My niece is graduating from nursing school. So I'm going to miss out on some of those things. But, nowadays we have FaceTime, we have other ways of connecting. So we, it's not, bless you.
Oh, bless.
That's okay. Yeah, there's a lot of blooming flowers and trees and lilies, and
we're in full swing allergy season here in the Pacific Northwest.
But I don't know. So that's my story, and I was also fortunate to have my sister, my brother-in-law, and my nephew come visit over Easter just recently.
That's right.
And it was so wonderful to have my sister here. Her and I, because I talked about the history and the background, but my sister and I are Irish twins. We were born, my sister was 2.5 weeks old at my first birthday. My birthday cake, my first birthday, and my sister was sitting on the table in one of those plastic, from the 1971.
Yes.
You know exactly what plastic little thing, and you
set it on the table.
You sit on the table, and she just was this little petite thing, and I don't remember my life without her.
Aww.
Yeah, she was. We were close, but we were really different in height. I think I told you guys I felt like a gorilla, and because.
I know the feeling.
I'm taller than my whole family, my mom and dad, my brother. I'm just, and it's not that I'm a freak of nature. I remember going into a science class, and they were talking about genetics and, the chromosomes and the 4 and then the dominant, and I'm like, wow, that is me. I'm like one of out of if they had 4 children, I probably still would be the tallest one, and the other 3 are going to be shorter, which they are. And so my sister, but she's a spitfire, and she's just adorable. I just love her so much. She's such a good mom, and her kids are great, and her husband's great, and her husband I've known, obviously since college or university.
Yes.
And when I lived in residence.
Right.
And he's a huge supporter of our Instagram page.
I know.
He likes everything, and he comes in. He's like one of the first people. I always look for him because I know he's going to be there. He likes everything. It's awesome.
I know. Thanks for the support. And I just had a great time with them. It was great. I
could tell in your pictures and your lives. And
I kind of felt like you
stories.
needed it.
Yes.
I did need
Perfect timing. Yes.
I just wish it was more time, and I wish I got to spend more time with my sister, even just the two of us on our own.
Right.
Sure.
Like even when I go to her house, sometimes we sneak away and we go, we'll go to the store or something, and her and I would be talking, and then we would like jam pack a whole bunch of topics in a very short time. But we would get our private time, but we didn't get too much private time this time. And not that we would, just like sisterly stuff, and we understand each other. We understand what we've each been through, and we understand our. My sister's like, I just want you to find your best and be, find the best person, and you deserve it. And, shit happens, but,
she's your biggest supporter.
Oh yeah. My little sister. She's
cheerleader.
Awesome. Yeah. She is. Yeah. She is. And then hopefully my brother will come visit in a couple, in the spring. So I'm kind of,
good.
Yeah, I'm hoping for that.
Got everybody lined up.
Yeah, I don't know.
Only
when
one family member at a time.
What's
people know.
Okay, so your brother is the youngest.
He's 9 years younger than me.
That's what I was going to ask. What's the difference?
Okay.
So I was 9 years old when he was born.
So you probably weren't as close.
He was born in 1979.
Oh yeah, we're a year apart.
Oh okay. Yeah. He's but we were so by the time he went to kindergarten, I was in high school.
That's hard.
And then then
you were out of the house.
And then I was out of the house. I was at university, and when he was in high school, and but growing up, I helped him get a job. So he got a summer job at a software company I was working for in Toronto, and he stayed at my house the whole summer, and he would drive in with work with me, and I got him into the IT department, and so he was like doing all the grunt work for IT and the email system and all that sort of stuff back then, and I just kind of helped him that way, and we're close in our own way. I mean, it's a huge age that he pretty much grew up
without you,
without me, and he also grew up as an only child. For the most part.
Because your sister and you were
out of the house, and I mean, my sister was 8 years, 8 years older than him, and so that's the family. That's my
awesome.
background.
That's so cool.
And you're the only one in the States. Everyone else is in Canada or Italy still.
I still have relatives in Italy,
but
not like they're like second cousins. My grandmother's 2 sisters and brother lived in Italy and Germany, and then my grandmother had 2 other brothers that lived here. My grandmother and grandfather, all their siblings moved to Canada. They all immigrated to Canada, but there's some great aunts or something still in Italy, and cousins in where my dad's town is. But I still, I keep in contact with them, and I'm trying to learn Italian again.
Are you
I'm taking Duolingo.
I was just going to ask if it's Duolingo.
Yeah. I have an Italian passport. I want to go back to Italy.
Yeah.
Listen, I know words. Like when I'm learning, I do know these words. I just don't know how to conjugate, or I don't know, when I listen to it, it's just, it always has to be in context, and then I can kind of figure it out.
Right.
So it's not like I'm like starting from ground zero, but it is interesting for me to try to learn. I'm like, oh my God, I haven't heard these words in a long time. And now I remember my grandmother. So when they would speak Italian to us, they would, point it out, or and then they'll maybe use 1 or 2 English words in between to help us. Or I would ask my aunts or my mom or my dad, like, what did she say? And but I picked up on it. I mean, I would get to my grandmother. My grandmother would like little. She would, and you wear undershirts. Do you remember the days we used to wear undershirts?
Yes.
She hated it. I had it all, like I still do. I don't tuck in my stuff, and she would like take me, and then she'd like take out, like undo my pants. She'd tuck everything in, like really tight, like in my underwear, like everything was in. Put it back on, and then she's like, oh, "Okay, now you look good.
Now you're presentable.
Now you're presentable."
They're so traditional back in the day.
Yeah.
I
Oh
mean,
my God.
you just had to fit the picture of whatever it was for them.
I remember that. But my grandmother was like, they would, and the church was important. I grew up and went to a Catholic school for both elementary and up to through high school. So I had my confirmation and communion, and everybody celebrates all those different milestones, and which was really wonderful. But I just, I don't keep up with it, and it's.
Did you have to go to confession?
I did.
Sophie? She's got a look on her face like, oh, God, yes, I did.
My last confession was 1987.
Did she celebrate
And she
it?
remembers.
I don't know that. I'm trying to think. It might have been when my sister got married.
Oh
You used to have have a confession before you can take the host. The communion.
Yeah.
So my grandmother would be, we missed so many. You got to go get your confession before you can go up for communion. I'm like,
oh boy,
they won't know.
So how did they know? Yeah.
We just know.
That's
And I
right.
would be my hand out. Bless me, Father. Don't let any lightning bolts hit me.
Right. Oh my God. Did you have to wear a uniform?
I did in high school.
Okay, yeah.
I wore a kilt.
Oh, okay. I was going to ask if it was a skirt or shorts or what. Yeah.
No, they had options for pants, but I used to wear penny loafers.
Oh, I remember the penny loafer days.
Yep. Wear a penny loafer, put a penny in it.
Yep.
And we would be freezing. We would have to wear our kilt, and I would have to wear leotards because we would wait out for the bus in the winter, and it would be freezing. Yeah, you guys don't know what cold is.
I was going to say, it's probably a lot. Your winters.
Our winters were cold.
Yeah.
Now they're mixed. Like there'll be bouts of pretty warm winters, and then sometimes there would be these freezing, awful, going up your skirt. Oh, you guys have no idea.
So, the temperature might have been different. Not in high school, but elementary school and into early middle school, we actually, in my family, we weren't allowed to wear pants to school. My parents had us wear dresses and skirts always. And so, I know at least the frigidness going up your ass. It's so cold. God. And I'm a cold person.
And then my legs would be like freezing. Like you would touch your thighs and it would be cold. It would be cold. But then we also used our skirts, and we used to put our little cheat notes in our skirt.
In the fold. Were they pleated?
Yes.
In the pleat.
Well, in the pleat, or you write it right on your leg.
Oh, for heaven's sake.
Yeah. Just pull that thing up.
And what is the teacher going to do? What are you doing, Sophie? I don't know. As you're looking down your skirt.
I think a bug crawled up my skirt. I don't know. Oh my gosh. That's awesome.
Could you imagine?
Yeah. Today they couldn't be looking at your skirt.
Right.
Anywhere close. So
Well, your skirt had to be, they would make you, at your knees. And so what I did was roll up my skirt. So I had it at my knees, and then I would roll it up. And it would be like above my knee halfway.
it would be a short skirt, a short kilt.
It was a short kilt that was like twisted, and then we would have like a baggy blouse that was see-through.
Whoa.
We had to wear a sweater over, and you weren't allowed to wear a T-shirt underneath because they didn't want you to wear, because people would wear graphic T-shirts, and they didn't. And it's see-through. So hello, you are gonna see the graphic tee underneath your T-shirt,
right?
Yeah.
And so we had to wear like little tank tops over our bras.
Were they like camisoles?
What we would wear underneath?
Yeah. Underneath. Yeah. Underneath. Yeah.
But you could totally see our bras. So if you didn't want to wear like the thing, then I wore my cardigan.
Yeah.
And oh my God, you know what we got to do is post some of these pictures. I'm going to post a few pictures when I do this reel.
Yes.
I have. Don't you worry. Okay. I have thousands. Don't you worry. I have pictures.
She was happy to pose in her short skirt.
Photos galore. Yeah.
Me with my braces, and I had like a little mullet kind of haircut.
Oh my gosh. I remember those bi-level haircuts. I think they might have called, I know mullet, but I feel like they called them bi-level.
It was like short, and then it would go over your ears, and then it would be long in the back.
why did we think that was attractive? I mean, I don't
but then,
know.
and then you like start teasing.
The teasing.
You would cut your hair like this short, and then you would tease all up here.
The front and across the top.
Yeah.
Yep. Oh, I remember. And then use the Aquanet hairspray so that it would stay in place. It was stiff.
Yeah. It was stiff.
We called them. If it's windy, it doesn't matter. It can blow you right over.
And my frizzy hair that I have, it was in style to be frizzy.
It was.
Oh, yeah.
The bigger, the
we'll
better.
all have to post pictures of our hair from the 80s. The 1980s hair was big. And we had mall bangs. We called them mall bangs.
No, I didn't
in
call
my
mall bangs.
School when you would rat or tease, the bangs. And so they were,
so
big
they
and
went,
stick up.
Mine went down, and then the other part
kind of
went
like
up.
a wave, sort of.
Oh, yeah. We should do like a 3 of us in the same. Oh,
okay, I got to look for some pictures.
Okay. Even if it's just your class like when you take your school picture, the school photo, and then the 3 of us.
Oh yeah, that would be awesome.
Okay,
we'll do that.
Be fun.
We got homework.
Oh, our first homework.
I can pull out books right now.
I
and
know
show
you
them all to
could.
you. I got them
know.
organized. I have I think 50 books, like legitimate photo books.
Yeah,
and I have them all written down. I write year, what I would do.
Love it.
I have lots of photos, but they're in lots of places.
No,
I did not take it. My mother is my mom has lots of photos, and that's all all the information and the dates are written down.
Oh,
and
so
everything.
I know exactly where I was. I know who I was with.
Yeah,
I still have my old telephone books from in high school.
Oh, like your little date book.
But but I had people's numbers in there, and I have I still have that. I'm a fucking hoarder.
I used to be a hoarder.
It's fun to save a few mementos.
Those, those are interesting. I think that they. And for me, when I see it visually, when I see those things, especially like old diaries and stuff, and I can see my writing, I know exactly what I was saying, and I can actually picture myself where I was,
remember,
right? What I felt.
Yes, no,
I go back every 10 years. Every 10 years, and when I hit my decade birthdays, I write in my journal, and I write about where I'm at and all that sort of stuff, and where I want to be and all that sort of stuff, and then I read back
the 10-year increments before.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
It's crazy. It is really crazy that 'cause even when I was turning 40, I was wasn't pregnant yet for Kyle, but that's what I wanted, and I had written that in there, but I remember how I felt. My writing changes depending on how upset I was or pissed or
yes.
Oh my God, big letters.
Yep.
Just fucking
Amy's over here like, hallelujah, sister. I know what you're saying.
You're cutting paper, or in your yearbook, you put X's on paper.
I know.
And then you scribble it until their faces are not even
off. Yes. Oh, I have lots of those. Then I look back later on in life, and I'm like, I wish I would have just left their face as it was.
I know.
What did they really look like?
I don't know, but I hated them.
Clearly. Bastard. Oh my God! I wonder if we should. On that note, on that note, I'm afraid I think we better wind up this podcast. I feel like I need to move a little bit farther away from Sophie now. Just kidding. Shoot!
All these feelings
are the knives. Are the knives all put away? Yes. Anyway, no.
That was fun. I'm glad we did that.
This was really good. And then next week you'll hear from either Amy or Heather and our background and our family story. And this is fun getting to know Sophie better today. So thank you.
Yes, especially because we only know what we've experienced with each other in the last 3 years. So we don't as much as our listeners are hearing this information, we don't really know about this information about each other either. Yeah. So it's super cool.
Yeah,
so
love
fun.
it. Yay!
Yay! Another one done.
Woohoo! Another one bites the dust, and another one. Okay,
and we're going to be posting those pictures.
Woo! Yes. All right. Bye, guys.
Bye.
Thank you. All right. Well, that's a wrap. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. We really appreciate you listening to us, and we look forward to hanging out with you next Wednesday. Please join us. And in the meantime, please follow us on Instagram at The Real Exes Portland. Also, we would love to hear from you and hear some of your juicy stories. You can email us your stories at rxop.yourstory@gmail.com. Until next week, bye.